Now, hey everyone, there's a reason why you're tempted to quit, and a lot of it comes from feeling frustrated by your current condition. It comes from that sense that circumstances are out of your control. It comes from change. In today's episode, we'll address some of these frustrations and suggest ways you can think about the changes you're facing with Meteor 3.0. We brought back a special guest today, and if you stick with us through the end, he's brought something that will make dealing with these changes much, much more bearable. Now, if you've been with us here all 23 weeks, you'll know that you're watching or listening to This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly news segment of the Meteor Dispatches podcast, a resource for both new and veteran users, hosted by MeteorJS community ambassadors who share information, events, and activities, and other newsworthy items with you. I'm your host, Alim Gafar, streaming live from the radial outer boroughs of New York City today.
I'm Dvorak, coming to you from Prague.
I'm Küster, coming to you from Germany.
And Philippe from Brazil.
Okay, and with that, I think we're going to go straight to the news.
So, starting up, a reminder, maybe we had our deep dive about Meteor 3 packages. So you can catch it again on our channel. And we'll quickly go some highlights. So we've covered all the, API stuff that you should know about how packages work under the hood, especially when it comes to updating. So things like API versions from and how to set up the version correctly to work, both backward compatible and also for Meteor 3.0.
Yeah. So we also showed with an example, you can also access how you make your packages compatible to Meteor 2.8 as well as 3.0, or how you handle fiber-specific situations for both major versions in order to have the maximum compatibility out there.
Yeah, we looked on some real-world examples. We updated Jan's app as well as other packages that we looked through how to actually go through and update them and get them at least ready so that they can go over the initial update hurdle for Meteor 3.
Yeah. And at the end, we discovered another problem that is not related to this upgrade process itself, but to the overall build system. And I don't know if every one of you know this, but the Node.js build system is actually depending on Python and to build native packages or to build native compatibility for packages. And I messed up my Python, maybe mostly due to my Python work, and I messed up some things, and now my Meteor build is not working anymore. So I don't know if that's a topic you would like to see in the future. Please comment or engage in the chat and let us know what you think about this, if I should cover this topic in more depth. If you want to know more about this, what this Node.js build system is, how it affects Meteor, what is related to, and also if you like to see a version of the same migration but with a happy end, so that would be great. Let me know, and then we can see what I can do.
All right. And pulling out a little bit from Meteor specific items and just talking about tools in general that we use when we are building applications, we often use the FS package to navigate the file system. And there is an article that was written by Nicholas Zakis recently where he talks about this new package that he's built for accessing the file system with a modern API, and it's a package called FSX. And so we have the article listed above. We'll have the links also available, and in it, he shares he shares this package and says, and he's looking for people to try it out. So you might want to take a look at it, see whether or not this is something that might fit a use case for you. Comment on whether or not you feel that it's a more ergonomic design. I don't know. We need a term in software that meets that kind of idea, the notion of sort of ergonomic software. But in any case, I was looking at this package and I was looking at the at Node and looking for the package to install. And when I did, I ran into another FSX that was built many years ago. And it's one of those things where I'm curious whether or not it's just a polluted namespace, whether it's FX Node, which is a common dependency, is actually something new, or if it's something that had been there for a long time and he's just bringing it back up again. I did a little more digging, and it said at npm that the Node.js bindings to the FSX library are in FSX Node, and although there's a separate FSX package that's 12 years old, it doesn't seem that it is the same thing. But I think from a cursory look, if you get there for the first time, it might be very confusing. With this new FSX library, it looks like FSX core is the only dependency. And so it looks like it's isolated from that 12-year-old package when you dig a little deeper. But it is confusing. And I think to the author of this, to Nicholas Sakis, it does lend some degree of confusion, and it might impede his ability to get this package more widely adopted. So that's my thought on this. I would suggest, if you would like, give it a try and see whether or not this is actually a better fit with more modern JavaScript paradigms, and help this guy out a bit by letting him know what you think about it. All right. But my 2 cents is, on the surface of it, is namespace collision is not a good thing. And that's all I have to say to that. Does anybody have anything they want to add?
Not really. It's always an issue naming things properly. In this case, if you do FS, which is for the file system, and just add X to it, it's like everybody is going to be, just because X is the sexy letter that you add to things to make everything look sexy. So yeah, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. All right, guys. We've got some people in the Slack before we switch over to Meteor Community Package Updates. We've got some people in the Slack who want to say, not Slack, in the
the chat.
In the comments, right? It's not comments. Yeah. What is this? In the chat.
It's a chat.
In the YouTube chat. I'm an old man now, right? That's like, oh, everything is Slack. But we have, is that Camila Rosa? I think she's over at Meteor. She is one of the community managers. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct.
So hi, it's good seeing you. We have Min is back with us again, as is Simon. Hey guys, it's good to see you here, and thanks for joining in. So we're gonna pass this on to the Meteor Community Package Updates now. I think Jan Küster is going to talk about that.
Yes. So this is just a very small update, but it still might be relevant for some of you. So I made a new compatibility release for simple schema, which I formally introduced back into the Meteor community packages, because those who use simple schema know that it was most of the time on NPM, but then they dropped Meteor compatibility with their latest major release. So I tried to fix that, which didn't work out quite well. So I made a full reverse back to the Meteor package, updated it, and now there is a new release which contains Meteor 3.0 and 2.x compatibility. If you're relying on that package, just go to the just try out the latest beta that is published. You can look it up on Packosphere. Packosphere is always listing also the latest versions. And what I also did is for the Autoform users among you is to prepare the Autoform update for 3.0 with the themes. So I got the themes already migrated to be 3.0 compatible, but the Autoform not yet, because that is a much bigger effort. And I hope so that in February I got Simple Schema and Autoform 3.0 ready. So yeah, so Jan is just showing the Meteor Simple Schema on the Atmosphere, and the latest version you can see now is 2.0 minus beta. So you don't see it on Atmosphere, but on Packosphere you can definitely see the latest version there. And this is
at the moment to load. Seems to be a bit slow today.
So there it is, Alit Simple Schema. And then it's the it's loading.
Yeah.
Mm.
Just it seems to be slow, at least for me today. Maybe some.
No worries. If you look for the latest version, you can simply look it up there and then try to install it. And more news are to come, definitely.
Yeah. Speaking of beta releases, there we go. So yeah, it's there.
That's the beta release, right?
So speaking of beta releases, we are also getting 2.14.1, or maybe it's going to be 2.15 if I'm reading the changes or the latest push to the branch correctly. So we shall see what that's going to be. Right now, what it's going to bring is MongoDB version 7.0.5. So that's kind of like the only thing. If it's going to be 2.15, I'll probably push. I'll be lobbying to include some of the other features that we have waiting for release. And that's it from the Meteor releases. At least as far as I know, I had a rough week. So let me know in the chat or the comments if I missed something, and I'll be happy to rectify that for next week. Oh, did we just lose Alim?
Yeah.
There we go. Nope.
Okay. So
Bring me back to the stage. I apologize, guys.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was trying to hit the camera and butterfingers. You know, that's how it goes. So if you're enjoying the show, as we have done every week, we ask you to like the episode. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm so far. We've been getting really good likes, and we've been growing the channel so far, and also growing our audience. So thank you so much for being with us. And with that, I want to introduce again one of our community members, a community ambassador, who has been with us for a long time. He's our former CEO of Meteor Software. And he was with us last week, and he hinted back then that he had something more to offer. And he has built this tool called ESLint, and he's going to share with us why this is going to make your life much easier when you are doing your Meteor 3.0 migrations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Felipe. So Felipe.
Yes, let me just share my screen so you can follow me here. I'm not in my house. When I'm not in my house, I kind of lost. I don't know why, because I have the same monitors in front of me. It's weird. Okay.
All righty.
Can you put in the transmission? I think it's already here. Okay.
There we go.
And if you watch to the end, you're going to see the SLint plugin working live into Quavi project, so you can see it's real. It's not just like a slide presentation. But anyway, let's start from the beginning. So we are creating a new SLint plugin for Meteor. And like, why are creating a new SLint plugin for Meteor? Because we already have one inside the Meteor repository, but you want to apply some rules in a smart way, considering the server and the client. So I believe if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with Meteor. And then in Meteor, we have like the client folder and server folder. But that's not always the case. Like before Meteor 1.7, that was always the case. You have these special folders with special names and special meaning. But if you are using Meteor in a more modern way, I would say, you are probably using the main module inside your package.json. And then you can specify where your client starts and where your server starts. So you don't need to worry about names and folders and special folders. I am talking about JS and TypeScript files, not like CSS and HTML, because you have other rules for that. And you have all this explanation in the docs of Meteor. If you go there, docs.meteor.com, and in the modules, you can put the link in the description later. But why I'm explaining all of this? Because if you go to the forums, you're going to see a lot of people recommending simple rules for you to add to your project to detect the change that you need to do for Meteor 3. But why this is not a good approach, in my opinion, is because you're going to get a lot of places where you don't need to migrate, because they are in the client, and your client code is not going to be affected in the most case. So these rules that we are adding here, the way that we are creating inside the SLint plugin, we are trying to detect if your code is in the server or is in the client, supporting both cases. The old case where you have magic folders with magic names, and also the new case where you have main module, and that happens automatically. So we are going to go to the root of your Meteor project, and our SLint plugin is going to parse your files to try to identify if they are being used in the server or in the client. So it's very important that you do that way. Otherwise, you're going to get scared because you're going to get a bigger number than actually you need to migrate of methods, for example, for collections. So we want to avoid with this plugin is the false positives. Like we don't want to have an error saying, oh, you need to migrate when you don't need to migrate. It's that simple, but to achieve that was not that simple. So we start with a code from Zodern that he had wrote in the past to detect one type of this way to structure your project. And then we enhance this code with other detections that you need to do for other cases. So now this code is finally working. It took more than expected. But what are the goals here? So the first goal for us, at least, was to be able to have a quick snapshot of how much work a project needs to be Meteor 3 compatible. It's just a quick snapshot. It's not like a deep dive into all the details, because it's just going to show you, for example, oh, you have 5 places where you need to migrate code, but you don't know how deep these places are. And maybe you need to go many levels of the stack trace to put a sink await, but at least you know a number. And then maybe inside your team, you can decide a goal. Okay, guys, let's get this number down every week by 20, by 100. I don't know what's the velocity that you want to migrate, but now you have a measure. You have a measure that you can have some internal goals, or you can even ask assistance for companies. For example, Quavi does migrations of this type, but doesn't matter if you want to use our service or if you just want to use for an internal goal. We already have clients using this plugin for both, because we are asking for some beta users, and they are even already contributing with PRs. So you can also send PRs to this SLint plugin. And this is the first goal. So, okay, now I know the size of my migration, and I'm going to show you very soon. For example, the Cloud Code, that's also using Meteor in the app. We have like about 500 places to migrate. So now we have a number. And the second goal that I think is going to be valid forever is that you want to have instant feedback about when you're using something that's not compatible. Because, for example, I'm using Meteor for maybe like 10 years, 11 years, I don't remember. So I'm used to doing the old way. So when I type the wrong code, the SLint is going to show me, oh, that's wrong. Because for me, it's right? For my brain, from 10 years, that was okay to write code this way. So it's going to warn me, and only when I'm in the server. If I am in the client, I still can use mostly all the old code that I was used to use. And also this is important because sometimes maybe you think this code is just used in the client, but it's not. So it's going to detect for you as well, because maybe somebody imported this file in a wrong place, and that's also going to detect. So it's very helpful to have this kind of smart way to detect the files. So just to already provide a link, so if you want to check anything, you can check during my explanation, but that's the link for the plugin. And as I said, there is already one PR that was merged that's not from us. It's from a client from France. So it's very helpful to have people trying, because you're going to find different cases, because Meteor is like very crazy in the amount of ways that you can use collections, for example. You can use in collections very different way. We are trying to cover our use case first, but you are probably going to find different cases that are not covered. And we can just adapt maybe 1 or 2 lines, and boom, it's going to work for your project as well. So how we do that? So as I explained in the beginning, we detect how you handle the modules. And for that, we need to understand what's the root folder of your project. I'm going to explain that if your project is not just a Meteor app, if you have a monorepo, for example, you need to provide an additional settings. And then with this in mind, we are able to create like a JSON file. And with this JSON file, you know which files you need to check for server rules. So if you're a company, if you have like some ESLint rules that you wrote, feel free to copy and paste our code to be able to also put a rule in your code that's going to be applied only for the server. So if you want to do that, we have all the code there, and it's a kind of a complex code because we need to load all the AST. So it's good to copy and paste it, don't waste time trying to create this rule again. And also, we are still not testing this code to validate packages code. But we think with minor changes, we can also evaluate packages code. The difference is that the way to configure client and server files in packages is a little bit different. Probably and Küster explained this already in the last deep dive, but you need to specify like, oh, this is a file that's going to the server, this is a file that's going to the client, or when you don't specify it, going to both. So we need to enhance this plugin to be able to understand that. So, and it should be simple, I guess, but we didn't test it with packages yet. So let's get to the rules. Like, what are the rules and what they do? So I'm going to show a very simple example of each one. At least you understand what we are validating here. So we keep the old rules. So if you don't need to have 2 ESLint plugins, if you want to keep the old ESLint plugins rules, you can use the same plugin, just our plugin. But we also add new rules. So you have the no sync Mongo. So you don't have sync calls in the server. We also have for the user. I'm going to show examples, right? So I'm just read fast here, so I have an idea. Wrap async, fibers, and promise. But let's see some examples. So for the Mongo part, the rules are going to validate methods from collections and also from cursors. When you do a find, basically you get a cursor back. So every time that I'm talking about cursors, I'm talking the return of a find. So just you have a mental model of this. So one example, if you use just a very naive approach and you try to identify everywhere where you call map, every map is going to return an error. So it's going to be a very silly approach because you're going to get all your arrays and you're for sure this code's okay. But if you get just this silly approach, it's going to say all the maps everywhere, they are invalid. Using the plugin, this is going to be okay. And that's going to be not okay. Because if you're already migrating your code to Meteor 3, you know that map is no longer available because map is actually starting to fetch the data. And as you know, in Node.js, when you need to fetch data, you always need to have like some kind of a sync API because you are doing IO operation. So this needs to be map async. So that's a fairly simple change in most cases, but it's very hard to find all the maps because you probably have a lot of maps doing array. And even if you change that to fetch first, you do find.fetchAsync.map, then it's going to work fine. So we are able to understand, okay, this object here is a result of a find or it's a result of something else. We only provide error if it's a result of a find, even if you assign to a different variables. But for example, if you get crazy and you have many layers, probably our ESLint plug is going to be lost. So test in your project, say, oh, in my case, it's not covering, and you can try to cover your case as well. But if you assign to a variable, that's going to work as well. So you can have the cursor, and when you put .map, it's going to say, no, this is a cursor, and .map is not supported. The second example is a little bit different because Again, if you go with a simple approach, you say like create index is not supported. That's wrong, because create index is supported. Like the Mongo Node.js driver original API still has a create index. In Meteor, we put create index async to be able to differentiate the old one for the new one. But in Node, this is still okay. So if you do like this, okay, it's fine. But if you do like this, it's not okay, because this function is not present in Meteor anymore. So you need to create async, create index async. And the error is also going to explain exactly what you need to change. I'm going to show this in a moment. Then the user is a very simple one. But again, if you do this in the client, it's fine. You can do this in the server. So we just apply this rule for the server. Wrap async is no longer available. We also, I think this never made sense in the client, but anyway, it's going to ignore. And fibers. I think people should not be using fibers straight from like the library to your code. And I never did this in my codes basically, but I saw a lot of clients code because we work with different code base. Like every week I see a new Meteor code base at least. And there are a few companies that they use fiber everywhere. So if that's your case, this plugin is going to help you. Your customer is doing like some funny faces, but it's true. There are some clients that I know, they use fibers everywhere. And of course, that's not recommended. That was never recommended. But if you have this case, this plugin can help you to identify that as well. And the other case that you actually are basically using fiber directly, but you think you are not, but you are, because all these methods here, they are made up. Like Meteor created these methods to wrap fibers features, but they are never possible outside Meteor. So that's basically the same as using fibers straight. I never use this as well, but I know a lot of companies that have thousands and thousands of this. So instead of using async in the Node.js way, they just await, and that the magic happens. Why? Because fiber is there. So if you're doing all these calls, they all need to be migrated. So again, I never saw anybody recommended that, but I know many clients that are using this quite a lot. So you should avoid this kind of code, but now you need to migrate anyway. So let's see some real code examples here, but just the warning so you see what I'm talking about. In this case, I configured this project to send warnings instead of errors. I'm going to show how to do both. But in this case, this is the zCloud code, it's a real code. And you can see in a single file, we have a bunch of errors. In this case, I map as a warning that I need to change. But it's very easy because I know exactly what I need to do. For each case, we have exactly what you need to do. So we are trying to provide instructions and not just the error, and you need to figure out what to do. Probably could also have some links to the docs and so on in the future. We don't have, I think, the final docs yet, but you can do that later. And as I said, for the map sync, for example, the same problem. Like I'm using map inside a cursor, and that's not possible. I'm inside a publication, so I'm probably doing some crazy stuff here. So how to configure, like how to have this feedback in your project? You have two ways. The first way, I think it's probably the way that most people should use. You just install the plugin as any other plugin, and then you add the rules that you want to follow, and you put the level here. 1 is warning, 2 is error, 0 is off. So you can even alternate. You can put 0, and because you don't want to have these errors every time in your face, or you can put warnings, at least you know the numbers, or you can put errors and you can have a control. If that's above that number, you can discard it, deploy. You can do a lot of crazy stuff with S-lint rules. I don't want to teach S-lint here, but that's the basic way. You have all these rules. Here's just an example with 2, because maybe you don't want to start with all the rules enabled because you're going to get a lot of errors back. You can choose. And the second way is easier, but I don't think most companies want to do that, because if you use our configuration, we are going to include the Meteor one, but you are going to include a lot of preferences that you have. You are going to include the Airbnb style. You are going to include a bunch of other S-lint configurations. Maybe you don't want to apply all the configurations that we think is correct. So it's better to go with the first one. If you are starting with S-lint rules from scratch, maybe you want to do this, and that's fine as well. And then you just need to put here that you are extending the configuration that comes from Quavi. By default, if you use this second method, everything's going to be an error. And then you can override, and you can say, oh, I am using the Quavi configuration, but I want to override this rule. That's also possible. For example, zCloud, we are not migrating our code yet. So in zCloud, I am overriding that I just want warnings. I don't want errors, because the errors, they fail our build. So I don't want to fail my build, but I want to know the number. So I'm just tracking the number, but I'm not migrating right now. So I'm just using as a warning. And as you can see, just these two rules affect zCloud code base, because we don't use fibers, we don't use wrap async, we don't use the other things. We have one fibers used with promise, but in most cases we don't use fibers. And here, just a tip for if you are using a monorepo, why this is important, because our plugin needs to understand where is the Meteor root folder. So you need to provide the root folders here if you have like different folders in your project. For example, in zCloud, you need to do that because zCloud is a monorepo. So to wrap up, let me show some examples. Now it's live code. So if anything goes wrong, sorry, but I think it's going to be okay. I tried to prepare some examples here. The first one is another project that's called Code for the Win. And I'm just going to show you, let me expand this a little bit. For example, here, I'm just counting the number of users that I have for each language, that if I change this to count, I already see an error. And what is the error? It's because I'm using counting inside a cursor, and that no longer works with Meteor. So you have this immediate feedback, and you have this error immediately at your screen. The other case that I want to show you is the map. For example, here, I am creating this cursor, right? And then I need to map over this cursor because I want to build a report with all the contents that people are completing in Code for the Win. Then if I change this, it's going to be an error. It say, oh, you can't use it. But if I have a simple array or any kind of array here, it's fine. Like, it's not an error. I can use it. But if I have like this in a cursor, because it was created by a find, if you look to our code, you're going to see how you detect that. We check if this variable was created by a find. We know it's not the perfect approach, because if you have many layers, it's not going to work. But you don't have types here. Like, we are not using TypeScript. You don't have any types to identify. So we need to come up with a creative way to detect that. So that's working. And the last case that I want to show here is that it's okay to use fetch in the client. For example, if I'm here in this code, I have the S-lint rules here, and it's not detecting this fetch here. But if I do the same here in the server, as you can see in the logs that I just run here, let me just get here. Oh, this search is lost. Why this search is lost? I think I need to do the search again. Okay, now it's in the proper place. You can see I have a warning where I'm using the fetch in the server. I'm not using as error here. This is zCloud, that's why I have a warning. But I can see, and I don't show the warning in my IDE, but can you see this is this warning here? But for the client, I don't have any problems because I can use fetch in the client. So that's basically just a few live examples. So this feedback is going to be back to you immediately, depending on how you configure your IDE to show warnings, errors, and so on. So have full control of whatever you're doing. And to end this presentation, please test this in your project. Why? Because you have a lot of different ways to organize Meteor code, and you also have different ways to use collections. So probably with a few tweaks, we can be compatible with a lot of code base. But if you don't try, it's impossible for us to know that, oh, I use a collection in this way. Can you enhance this configuration? And you can try to do a pull request. Even if you don't have time to do a pull request, just open the issue, and you can try to understand what is important. Provide the code snippet. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible for us to understand why our S-lint plug is not working, because we don't know your code base. Or explain very well, or better, provide an example in a small repo so you can fix this case for you and for the whole community, right? Everybody's going to be able to use this plugin. And that's it. Thank you.
So in a lot of ways, this discussion and the topic that Felipe has brought up is really for people that have existing applications that are written in Meteor. And now we're talking about really the people that have been using Meteor for a while. So if you're new to Meteor and you find some of this a little confusing, it's primarily because it is intended for folks that have existing applications that were written in older paradigms of Meteor, older versions prior to 3.0 and prior to using these async features, and we're using the old Fibers module. If you're new, none of this is going to make sense to you, right? And that's by design. This is for people that have been around, have been using Meteor for a very long time, and will be now taking their older applications and using it on the Meteor 3.0 platform. So,
yeah, but even if you are starting, I recommend you to install the plugin, because maybe you're going to see some code examples in the forums and in Stack Overflow that they are old. And then when you paste in your project, they're going to, oh, this is not working. So at least you understand that you are using something that's not available anymore. But of course, it's much more helpful for users that are already using Meteor.
this is a good point, because we have tutorials that are up on the site right now that use the old paradigm and probably will not be updated for a while. So I think this would actually be a very good thing for you to keep in mind if you try doing some of those tutorials and the example code, running the example code. Go ahead.
On top of that, if you use any AI assistants that were trained on all the old Stack Overflow questions, I mean, that's where they get trained, right? Then it might also be very likely that this AI assistant will generate the old code. So in that case, it also makes sense to have the plugin installed.
Yeah, and just an idea, if you're here just looking for something to work in the open source world, like get these templates or these examples that you have in the Meteor tutorials. If you don't know where they are, we can provide you the links. What you can do, clone this example locally, install the plugin, see the errors, fix the errors, because these examples, they are simple. They are probably going to have like 50 errors, 40 errors. I don't expect to have more than 100. And then you can just fix this case. You learn how to migrate a project to Meteor 3, and then you submit a PR, and then everybody's happy. So it's just a silly idea, but I think it's good for you. If you want to practice, of course, they're going to be simple, but that's good because you can learn how to migrate a simple project first, and then you can start to help in your company or in a bigger project.
Excellent. Anybody else have anything that they want to add or ask about before we move on to?
Yeah, I would add one question, Felipe. How does it behave with test files? Because if you have like 100 files in your project and you care about testing and test coverage, you might also have 100 additional test files.
Yeah, we have test files in this project, but I didn't double check if it's in detecting that or not. But what I would say, it's just like constructing the tree. So probably the test files are not in the tree, right? Because it's not finding. If you're using main module, if you're not using main module, I think it's going to be detected. But if you're using main module, that's also a good issue to open, or a PR, because you can also have a mode where you track also the tests. But I don't know if you want to do this all the time. So you could have a flag like include tests, but that's also an option, but should be easy to include, because you can also just run everywhere and just to have all the reports back, but it's going to have some false positives in the mix.
Okay. I think we're going to move on to the next section now, which is our useful resources. And we've been doing this for a couple of weeks now. We've been highlighting some calls for papers and conferences that are available that you can use to, step up your personal game and increase your personal net worth by expanding your network. So with that, I think Jan Storyteller is going to give us a rundown on some of the upcoming conferences that are available.
Yes, so first one coming up on February 2nd, where I'll be present, is Congress Next.js in Warsaw, Poland. So if you are there, send me a message on Twitter, on the forums, and we can arrange to grab some tea or have a chat. We'd love to, if you are from Warsaw or if you are coming to this conference, to meet with you. Then following that, not following that, on the other side of the world, we have NG India 2024. So that's on 10th of February. Then on the 15th of February, we have DevOps.js Conference, which is online. for those unfortunate that that you deploy to Amazon manually or some other non say Galaxy or Z Cloud hostings. That might be a good conference for you. Or if you want to get even more deeper into the hosting management and running application. Next is on February 28th, JSWorld Conference 2024 in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And March 7th, Open Source Day 2024 in Italy, Florence. So say also nice for vacation. And Frontrunners 2024 in Washington, D.C. on March 8th. Gonna closes the pack for this week's announcements. But we have still some CFPs, or if you want to present. And Jan, take that away.
Yeah, so the call for papers are a good opportunity for yourself in order to participate in any conferences because they're calling for you. So you could take the chance. There's CascadiaJS, which is a local conference in the northwestern of the US. And from what I've read on their website, it seems that they are, because they're a little bit smaller, is also a little bit denser in terms of the community, and people love that about the conference. So if you're in this region, it might be something very interesting to you. Of course, if you're not in that region and you just want to participate, then go for it as well. It happens on the 4th of February. So it's that's the closing. It's not the conference happening, but that's the date for the CFP. And yes, that's the one. The date of the conference itself is in June, correct? And the next one is the Node Congress, which is an entire online conference with a very strong focus on the backend and DevOps, as they're already shown on their website. And the CFP date is the 11th of February. You can also, when you have them, when you're interested in that, I'm not sure if they were the ones with multipass, because some of these conferences are also covered in the multipass. If you don't know what that is, you should just go on the conferences and click on tickets, and then you see if they're available on multipass. That gives you the opportunity to pay, I think, $160 as an annual fee, and you can get up to 8 or 10 conferences where you can attend online, which is very good if you're on a budget, especially if you're on your own going to them. And what's also good on these conferences is always their workshops. So even if it's not your main area, this one is with multipass. You see, that's remote full ticket with multipass. Even if this is not your area, like for example, I'm not very strong in backend and DevOps, but that might be interesting for me because they offer lots of workshops usually on these conferences or topics, and it might be very interesting to peek into that, to broaden your sense, to think out of the box, get new ideas, or even try to get into these new topics you're usually not working in. Then there is the next conference is JS Conf in Ireland. The CFP is on the 29th of February. So this is a Ireland and European focus conference, and this is maybe not as big as the one that are coming up now, but it's still a pretty solid one with a pretty solid setup of speakers. And the CFP date was 29th February, right? And then there is coming in March, and now we get to the big ones. There is JS Nation in Amsterdam, and this is one of the very big ones. And if you look at the speaker setup, then you will know that this is like the world-class conference. I mean, there are people like there's even Scott Zielinski, as you see, so someone who already promoted Meteor as well, and but there are also it's the who is who on the frameworks and technologies and all that stuff. So hopefully there will be someone talking about Meteor in the future as well. And
that could be you, the listener out there right now.
Yeah, of course. That's the whole thing, right? I mean,
That's
of course, it looks always so hard to be on the same level as these people, but they started at the same level as we all did, right? So that's the whole idea here. We give you information, we give you an input, and you can try it out. You give your best, and sometimes it works out. That's the good thing about it. So CFP date is 3rd of March. And it is also included in the multipass I talked about before. And then we come to the last item, which is also CFP date in March, is the React Summit. It's also in Amsterdam, and I think it's also hybrid. So that's the good thing about these conferences. They're not only 100% local, but they're also hybrid with some online available online options. And the latest one, the React Summit, is the biggest one in the React community. This has also a super big setup, and as you can see, there are already these super famous people. If you're following blogs and all that stuff, then you have heard lots of these names already. And yeah, CFP date is March as well. It's also in the multipass. Check that out, and also don't hesitate if you have a topic that might be interesting and it's not covered there, and you've written that up very well, then consider submitting it. That's the whole idea for these conferences. If you have high quality contributions, then they might consider you. That's it. And if you want to get constant updates on these things like conferences, inputs, opportunities, and all that stuff, then subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, because then you will get the update when our episodes come out. And in our episodes, you get the updates on when these things come out. And you help us grow.
One of the things I just want to interject here and add is it may be a little unnerving when you take a look at conferences like Node Congress or JS Nation or React Summit, and you see these big, stars, so to speak, that are on that stage, that are out there, and you might feel a little intimidated about applying and putting in a talk. I would say, by the way, don't. Just put it in anyway. But if you really want to, have a better sense of an opportunity, the smaller conferences might be actually a better way to get started. So when we're talking about things like CascadiaJS or JS Conf Ireland, those conferences might actually be a little more accessible for the first timer. They're a lot more intimate, they're smaller, and they might be more open to taking somebody who is just starting out. One of the other things I want to point out is we haven't had them in a while, but we need to start again. And one of the places that you could try out your talk as you decide that you're going to do an application is in local meetups. And if you have one available to you, I would say try it there. Go and get in touch with your local meetup organizer and see if they might be interested in letting you present to their audience. For myself, I am reviving the Meteor New York meetup. It's going to be online for now. And so starting next month, I'm going to be opening the doors again for speakers. So if you do have a topic or, an idea that you want to use to present, let us know. Just write it in the comments and let us know that that you're interested in doing something. And, we're open to it. That's why we're here, to help the community grow. And part of the growth is when you come in and you share what you know, and you share what you've learned, and you share what you've discovered. And those are things that help the rest of the people of the community say, oh, I'm not alone in these problems that I'm facing, or I'm not the only one that's discovered this kind of solution. And by the way, yeah, it's okay. It might be a hack, but other people are using it too. So, I'm a good enough developer. I'm doing good. So that's my thought on that. Give it a try. And we'd love to see more people speaking, presenting, sharing their knowledge about JavaScript and MeteorJS. And that'll help us get back out there again. Not the 2 or 3 guys that are doing it all the time, but more. You. That's what we're looking for. Your contribution too. With that, I will stop talking now and turn back to the outline that we've got here, the program outline. And guys, what's the story with our upcoming deep dives? We just did one recently, right? We just did the one yesterday, the deep dive that you did on the Meteor package system.
Yes.
So storyteller, tell us about the rest.
So we have decided what the topic for our next deep dive is. It's going to be Express.js in Meteor 3. So that's the replacement in the web app for Connect. So we'll dive, into that. And just on top of it, I think we're also going to probably submit a pull request to update the Apollo starter skeleton on that one. We don't have any updates right now on the Blaze panels, but hopefully we can settle on something soon on that regard. That's it for the deep dives. And just a shameless self-promotion for myself. I will be on the official Meteor stream, which will be in about hour and a half after this. So you can check me out on the official Twitch Meteor channel. That's where the stream is hosted.
Are they going to be recording this one this time?
I think the previous one is also recorded, or the one that they did previously. So that's
Okay,
there. Hopefully it will be there.
Mhm.
And that gets me to my Monday streams. Apologies, I don't have, I think, anything technical interesting this Monday, because I'll be talking about my Literal Universe that I am building with Literal Universe. But over the weekend, I will prepare a schedule for February, where there's going to be a lot of Meteor 3, and probably performance-related stream is also going to happen. So you can check that out on my personal YouTube channel at StorytellerCZ. And with that said, that's all I have from the upcoming stuff.
All right. Excellent. And what do we have? We don't. I see here we have under understanding Meteor. Oh, this was a possible item that we might have done this week. I think what's going to happen is so let me just address it, because let me take this off, by the way, the Meteor Twitch stream. Okay, and we've got we have the other banner running at the same time. So let me just say this. I'm glitching. I'm glitching again. I'm doing old man stuff again. I'm glitching. Küster had actually suggested to me that one of the things he might want to do is spend a little time going deeper into some live coding with regard to the package object and the and why don't I just turn this over to Küster, because I mean he could articulate it better than I can right now. But initially the idea was he might do some live coding today on the package object, but I think he has an idea for doing a longer episode as a standalone. So Küster, why don't you share your idea and see if anybody might be interested in this idea.
So as I talked before, there was this error that came up during our deep dive, and the idea was initially to just redo what we did here, but then on another machine where I didn't mess up things, and it's more clear and it will succeed. But now things have changed a little bit, because I was thinking maybe I will use this tutorial, I will use this code base, and I will fully update it in a session, not only the packages, but also the code, using the tool Felipe demonstrated today. And then doing a full wrap up of this, not only updating the packages, but also update the codes and the tests, and see how that works out. Maybe open up one or more issues in Felipe's repository, or maybe adding a pull request live. So this may be also interesting to people to see how we're doing this actually when we have to make pull requests there. And I would wrap that up in one episode, because that may take up, depending on the situation, up to an hour. And then that would definitely exceed our format here. And if this is what people are interested in, then please let us know. And I will prepare an episode for this, not on a Friday, but on another date, like on a Thursday or something. And then I will get into this on my own.
And so the benefit is what here?
The benefit would be that we have a reproducible repository that you can use, or that you can look into, and just you can see how a current project is updated to the latest state, including packages, including code, including tests. So also making sure that there's no regression of the code during update, because it's a very compact repository. It's not super big, but it's manageable. So that would the benefit would be here, that it's also something that people can grasp. It's not so huge that you will lose orientation on it. You might stay in the context very good.
And part of, I guess, the benefit also would to hear your thinking out loud as to how you're making decisions in terms of what you're looking at, and when you're debugging, when you are going through the actual process of here's my workflow to make this migration happen, right? What are the steps you're taking, and then how you're overcoming issues as you face them. Is that part of it?
For example, in the deep dive, we had to locally clone packages and modify them in order to make them at least work out from the package perspective. But we didn't focus here on making them work from a code perspective and a runtime perspective. That was just because the deep dive was focusing on packages, right? Mm-hmm. And with this, it could be much more focusing on the overall context, including code and runtime. Yeah.
And will you be also, exploring some concepts as in terms of best practices for migrations, such as, having a second or a test setup someplace, so that you're not affecting live production systems?
Yeah, we can try to cover that.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So if you folks think that this is something that can be valuable, please let them know, and put that in the comments. And I think the default motion is to actually make the plan and do it, right? But if there is a lot of negative responses to this, we don't need this, there's something better that we want to hear about, we should be spending our time in something else, then I would assume that we'll make a modification. But for now, do you think that would be something in the next 2 weeks that you would plan for?
Yes, okay. I would definitely plan that in the next 2 weeks, and not later.
Excellent. All right. And with that, I think we are getting towards the end of the program. We've got a couple of reminders. I'll turn that over to Storyteller to, fill us in on. What do we need to remember?
So let us know about, if you have any feedback for us, what do you think, what we could improve, what do you want to hear about, what we should focus on, because, if you don't tell us, we are going to focus on what we think is interesting, that might not be interesting for us. And since we focus on what we think is interesting, we are not focusing and then not having time to focus on what you want, us to focus on. So topics that are more important to you. Other than that, please support the volunteers that make Meteor community packages and support the ecosystem. Please consider sponsoring them. We have here sponsorship for Jan Küster on GitHub, and also for me as well. So if you are so inclined, please consider sponsoring us, and you'll get some benefits in return as well on that. And there's just more than the two of us that have sponsorship, so always check out the sponsorship option on the GitHub repository.
And I can also tell you already one benefit that you got back. So thanks to the sponsoring, I got this nice little friend down here optimized. So I think, and I hope that the audio quality from my voice is now much better than it was before, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. We talked about this, and I realized that I did not upgrade my audio this week, so I will have to make sure I do that next week. Jan and I had talked about this during the week about the last few episodes, going over it and making sure that our audio is good. I want to also point out, by the way, that there are a number of different links to different resources in the program description. Every episode, there is a standard set of links that we have there, including a link to a suggestion form that we put together at the very beginning. Storyteller had done a really great job with that. It had been used initially. We have not been talking about it very much. If you would like to suggest items for discussion, people that we should be bringing on the program and talking to, you can use that form to do so, or just put it directly in the comments for the episode. We read them all, and when we get them, we respond to them, and then we'll respond to them on the program, the next program. We've done that in the past. We would love to continue doing that. We would love to get more interactions from you. We're very happy to have interactions live with us, but we don't want it to end there. When the program is over and we are done with the live stream, you could still engage with us by going and putting your ideas and thoughts into the comments. So please do that. That would be great for us. And I just want to mention that coming up next week, we are going to be getting into the crystal ball gazing. Normally, people get together at the beginning of the year or at the end of last year. They make their predictions for the future year. Well, we're a little more scientific and cautious about it. We see how things trend a little bit, and then we expand upon that. And actually, because we were spending a lot of time talking about migrating to the next version of Meteor, and that puts us on par with all the other back-end and platform systems that use the most current version of Node, we can now have a good feeling about the idea that we're going to get there. And now that we know that we will, we can start thinking about what we want to see Meteor become as we move further into the future. And so we're going to spend a little time next week coming up and sharing our ideas. And if you're in the chat with us and you have ideas about where you think Meteor should go and how it should evolve and what's the next part of the future for Meteor, then put them in and we'll bring you in and into that conversation. One last thing is we expected to have Captain N. I'm trying to remember his first name, Newman, who was going to be with us hopefully last week, but didn't make it then, and we haven't heard back from him for this week. So if Kevin, I think that's his first name, Kevin Newman, is watching this episode, he may have forgotten that we had this conversation before, and we would love to have him on the episode with us. We have some other people that are in the list, Max Savin among them, that we said we were going to try to get on, and we will. And going forward, we'll try to bring more people in if that is interesting, and if there are other folks within the Meteor and Node community that you think would be interesting to hear from, again, write it in the comments or use the linked form and give it a try, and let us know who you want to come on board. And one last thing, if you're new to Meteor and this is all gobbledygook to you, then I think the first thing you need to do is go to the Meteor website, download Meteor, and install it and get started with it, and then come back again to the program so that you can learn more about how to use it. And with that, I will just put a reminder there, and I put it up just a minute ago, that Fred is saying, by the way, don't forget to follow the Twitch channel for MeteorJS. And that is where Storyteller is going to be in a couple of minutes. We're going to get
hour
off
and a
this,
half,
and then,
about, I think. So not a couple of minutes, at least 1 hour.
How long from now, Storyteller?
If I am translating my time zones correctly, it should be in hour and a half. So
an hour and a half from now, Storyteller will be at that location. So we'll try to throw that into the chat someplace, so that if you, not in the chat, but in the comments, so that if you come to it afterwards, you'll be able to get to him. All right. And unless somebody has something to add, we're going to say
just Meteor software. If you search that on Twitch, it should pop up.
Right. So have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.